of all, you're going to look in the description box down below, and there you will find the instructions to get the free pattern. You need to print out 5 of these for the mini quilt. You need 9 of them, and there are 2 per sheet, and obviously one is going to be redundant, but if you make a mistake then you can use that one. This is 1 block, and as you can see it is mini for our miniature quilt. So what I'm going to do is cut along these lines here. This is our seam allowance, so we don't want to cut it right next to them squares. We want to cut it on them little guidelines there. So I'm going to go ahead and cut all of them out. I'm going to show you how to do this 1 block, and then you can take it from there and continue on and do the other 8. So basically these 2 are identical, so I'll put that to one side and I'll show you how to do these 2. This can easily be done with scraps. I actually had to give you these estimates so you knew the amount of fabric that you needed, but we are actually just playing with really small pieces, and you really don't need that many. Actually, I don't need that in this video, I just need these lighter colours. And what I'll generally do is cut a little piece like this off the fat quarter, and then I'm just working with these smaller strips, and then with the smaller strips I can just cut them down into what I actually need. So like I said, A and B are identical, so I'm going to show you with B and C what we're doing here. I'll do the more complicated section first. So this is B1 and B2. We always start where it's saying 1 and 2 and follow through when we are foundation paper piecing. So for this mini quilt block we are going to do a light pink, and then we're also going to have a white next to it. So you don't want to be frugal on the fabric, because once you start, you need to cover this whole area with fabric basically. So on your first one, on your B1, it needs to be lined up. All we're concentrating on is this line right here, and this first piece of fabric always has to be facing up, so facing towards us, and then I'll put this other section on top. Now as long as that fills B1 and then the white one fills B2, we're good to go. So I want to make sure I have about 1/4 of an inch overhang from this line here. So it's 1/4 of an inch over. Then we're going to use this line here to sew down. I am not paid or sponsored to create this video. I sew using a Baby Lock Soprano. In the top of my thread I have a regular Gutermann polyester thread. I like to change my stitch settings to a 3, which is a regular straight stitch, and then basically I like to take the stitches down to a 1.8 or 1.6, because this is a really small area that we're sewing, so we want to make sure that it's not going to unravel on us. I like to use the regular foot on my machine, and I'm just going to take this needle in just a couple, so I can make sure that that line now where the center is now in line with the needle. So we're going to place that needle down onto that pattern, and we're going to sew straight down that line. So I'm going to sew. I do like to back stitch and then sew and then back stitch again. So as you can see, we sewed all the way down that line there. So basically you want to keep everything clean and tidy, so we're just going to move these threads out of our way, and there'll be some others on the other side obviously. So I'm going to flip this over, trim these threads away. I'm going to do that every single time, but I'm not going to say it every time because it gets annoying. So basically what we are going to do now is flip this white piece over. So we are going to get this piece and flip it over. Now all we want to make sure is once we've flipped this piece over, every piece of this white piece of fabric is covered. to that area that we want it to go to. So as long as there's white all completely covered over that triangle, as well as fabric covering all of this area, then we are good to go. I like to use one of these rollers because I don't want to get up and down all the time and do some pressing. So we're just going to press with this. Now the next thing that we need to do is as follows. We're going to turn the whole unit over. Now where it says B2 and B3, we are going to fold on this line here over, and then we are going to cut all the excess away 1/4 inch. So I have my little ruler here and I'm going to line it up. Doesn't have to be a perfect 1/4 inch. I sometimes do this with a pair of scissors as well to save myself some time, and then we take all this away. Then you flip that back, and then we're going to need another white section. So we're going to turn this all over here now, and we're going to start seeing our mini quilt block progress. So I'm going to get a piece of white. I'm going to make sure that it covers all this area here. So when we flip it back, everything's all covered. So hold on to it and sew down this line here between B3 and B2. Remember to cut your threads away. Pull this back and then press. Get your little roller out and press that. Turn it back around so we can see what we have to work with next. So we have another white piece. We're going to fold in between that B4 and B3. Cut away 1/4 inch. Get our next white section. Place it where it needs to go, making sure that this fabric is going to cover that triangle. Make sure you keep it all in place. And then you are going to stitch down between B3 and B4 this line here. Once again, flip this back and press it down, and then turn it around, and then we're working on B5. I'm going to fold this over, cut the 1/4 inch off, so following that diagonal all the way down. You can then flip that back, get a piece of light pink, place that on, hold everything into place, flip over, and then stitch this line in between B5 and B4. Then you're going to flip this back, press, and then I'm going to take my ruler, and then right at this edge here, we are going to place our ruler next to it, and you're going to cut along. Do the same all the way around the block. I love this part because you really get to see your little mini quilt block come to life. And then just go around and trim this. Just try not to cut the paper. You don't want to cut into your seam allowance. And then cut this. Now this is one section of your mini quilt block, and when you turn it around, that is all finished there, like so. So now go ahead and do that other section. I'm going to do A, is exactly the same, and we will meet back when you have them both done to do section C. So rewind if you can't remember, or just pause this video while you just make this one up. So now we have two sections of our miniature quilt. So the last one we need is C. So I'm going to put these two to one side, and this is going to be very easy. So we're going to get C1, which is a white, C2, which is a pink. Remember, C1 needs to be face up on the back. C1 is face up, and then when you put C2 on top of that, that is going to be face down. Then you need to make sure that this is going to be 1/4 inch. You can hold it up to a light source and it will show you the back of that fabric. So I can tell that that is 1/4 inch, and I'm going to sew down this line in between 1 and 2. You know the drill, cut away the threads. I hope you're enjoying this tutorial. I have over 500 sewing and quilting tutorials, so please be sure to subscribe, because there's lots and lots on my channel that I think you will love. So the next thing is in between C2 and C3. So we're going to fold this over, cut away that 1/4 inch. Let's get my ruler here and cut that 1/4 inch. Then you flip that back up, and we're going to get a piece of white fabric. Put that up against the other section, hold into place, flip it around, and sew in between C2 and C3, this line. So we flip that back, turn everything over, and then go ahead and cut away this excess fabric here. So now we have this quilt block, and we need to take the paper off now. It served its purpose. I hope you're enjoying foundation paper piecing. I really like it for these little mini quilts because it can give you some really great corners, and I don't have to mess around trying to get these half square triangles, just doing it with a rotary cutter. So I find it a bit better doing it this way. So I'm going to take these away. I'm going to do that with all of the sections. Next step I like to do is just press these out because they're a little bit curly. When you press these, just be careful not to warp them out of shape. So now what we need to do is join this quilt section up. So this is one of the edges and this is the middle. You're going to do it right sides facing, and you're going to try your best to line everything up with the seam. And then you're going to sew all the way down 1/4 inch. Just double check that your sewing machine is sewing at 1/4 inch, because it'll knock everything off if it's not sewing at 1/4 inch. On my Baby Lock Soprano, I like to change my stitch to a stitch 30 and then put that sewing foot with 1/4 inch guide on. You're going to cut away your threads as you go, open that block out, and then you're going to get the other side and you're going to put that right sides together. So then purple triangles are facing on this outside edge. Then you're going to open out and you're going to give it a nice little press. Now you can go ahead and sew your other sections. So you need 9 in total. And then once you finish that, each of those, you're going to join them together. So you're going to do the exact same thing. You're going to turn them right sides together, and you're just going to sew all the way across. You're going to open this one up, get your next one, and sew them right sides together. Open it up, give them all a nice press, and then you will have 3 of these rows when you continue on to do the other ones. And then we just need to stitch these rows together. So this is where I do start to clip now, because it's getting a little bit longer and these seams well, there's a lot of them, and I want to make sure they are joined properly. Once these are all sewn together, you're going to take it back over to your iron and just press. So just so you know, if there's ever going to be an error on your miniature quilt block, it's always going to be at your seams. So see here, I didn't get it to correctly. So either unpick it or whatever to make it right. I'm going to leave it, but I'm just showing you where the error has occurred. So this seam here isn't matching this seam up here. So make sure you go slow with it and make sure that you're as accurate as you can be. Now let's do the quilt sandwich. So you can have a backing piece, and if this is a pattern, you can have that facing down onto the table. You can have a batting piece, and then your quilt top is going to be on top. So what I do with these little baby ones, I don't bother to free motion them. I will basically use a decorative stitch that is on my sewing machine. I did this nice little serpentine stitch on my soprano, and it's stitch number 52. Now when it comes to binding something this small, I wouldn't go anything wider than a 2-inch width of fabric. Take your binding strip, fold it in half, take over to your iron, and press all the way down. So it's good to leave an overhang so we have something to work with afterwards. And what we're going to do is sew a little bit right into this corner here, because we want to keep all of this open because it becomes a little bit tricky when you come to joining it up. That's sewn all the way to the end. Lift the binding straight up and then fold it back onto itself. And then you're going to sew all the way down to the bottom. You're going to do the same thing to all 3 corners, but when you come to this corner, just sew a little bit here and stop. Do yourself a favour and get one of these. I'm not paid nor sponsored, but I will put a link to the Amazon description down below, so you can click on that link and I may get a small commission if you decide to buy at no extra charge to you. So I'm just going to find the middle of my miniature quilt block here, make a line. And then I just want to cut this one just a little bit on that centre there. So there you go, he's all done. So this other one here, I am going to lay my ruler, and where that 2 inches, I am going to meet that over there and then fold back on that 2 inches, which is there. So I am going to trim that away. So the binding strip on the left hand side is going to be opened out and it needs to go straight up. The binding strip that is on the right hand side needs to go from left to right, open it up, right sides out, and meet them two together. So the bottom one is going up and down and the top one is going from left to right. It's always better to fold this in half as well so you're not fighting with it. So I like to grip it with a wonder clip on the back. And then you got more space to open this up. So basically what we're going to do is where this corner is here and then the corner is on the opposite side, you basically want to draw a straight line going across. You can use this on this tool, but this one's a little bit too small. So I am going to use my ruler. So what I'm going to do is get that to hold that down so it doesn't move on me. Then I can get rid of these clips and then I can draw a line that goes across. Now take that over to your sewing machine. You may want to clip that together so it doesn't twist on you, and sew across that line. Once we've done that, we can remove the clip. We can trim the excess off because we don't need that. And then you get to flip it out and it's absolutely perfect. There's no guesstimating. It's a little bit fiddly, but there's more things fiddly and sewing than that. So then sew across here. So like I've said before, just go ahead and remove all of these threads because they're going to get in the way when you're doing your binding, trust me. So let's get rid of them now. Now we're going to push the binding to the back. I like to sew to the front and machine sew on the front and hand stitch on the back. So go around and clip this. I swear if you master binding this small, then you'll be able to do your bigger quilts with your eyes closed. Now what we're going to do now is hand stitch all of this shut, because if I did it by machine, the stitch would just show up on this side and I really don't want that to happen. This is what your miniature quilt looks like once it's complete. It's so adorable. Hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Don't forget to subscribe, like and comment down below. Thank you for watching.